economy, not throw it away. Kia ora, Mr Speaker.
Kia ora. Before I call the next members, just to advise the House that the next call is a split call with New Zealand First, so there'll be two members, and what I will do is so 2 5-minute calls, what I'll do for the members is with 1 minute remaining, the bell will go.
Thank you, Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable Member Andrew Williams.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Quality, not quantity, as we always say in New Zealand First. I take a rise and call on the Appropriation 2012-13 Estimates Bill, which we have described in the past as being the bill that represents the Fagan budget of this national government. The Gotta Pick a Pocket or Two budget of 2012-13, which basically saw the poor paper boys and paper girls of New Zealand being ripped off for $14 million, $14 miserable million from the paper girls and paper boys of this country for this government to try and help balance the books. This will be looked back on a bit like the Ruth Richardson budget of the early 1990s as a most miserable and miserly budget, Mr Speaker, where we will see zero growth in many sectors, where government departments basically are on their knees, the likes of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade, which is where they're trying to save $24 million of our frontline people around the world who are negotiating our access to foreign markets and our access and diplomatic ties with many important trade partners and international countries that we so dearly depend on, where they're spending $9 million in this budget to basically save $24 million, and where much of that saving will be lost anyway, going out to consultants and being farmed out for a net nil result. This budget where we'll see the likes of the police and the armed forces getting zero increases in their budgets. So as a result, the morale in the likes of the police force and much of our armed forces is not great, because they really are not being acknowledged and rewarded for their efforts in terms of our New Zealand law and order and our defences. This is also a budget, Mr Speaker, where there's an attack on our students, our future and brightest young people of this nation, who we keep referring to as being the ones who will come through and help grow this nation, and our postgraduates who basically will struggle to be able to afford to stay with their courses, with their postgraduate studies under this particular budget of this government. It's a message from this budget, Mr Speaker, that our brightest and our youngest should head off to Australia and further afield for a brighter future that our Prime Minister John Key keeps talking about. Unfortunately, the brighter future at the moment for many of those younger people under this budget is not here in New Zealand, it's on foreign soils. This is also the budget, Mr Speaker, that will be remembered as the sale of state assets budget, where my family's heritage, your family's heritage, Mr Speaker, the heritage of many in this House whose families and loved ones have helped build up this country over many, many decades and in fact centuries, where it's being sold out down the river, literally the words down the river, with the sale of firstly our power stations and state-owned enterprises, power generating companies, where the likes of Mighty River Power will be first on the block to help balance this government's future budgets, and where the likes of those important places such as those great dams in the South Island, the wonderful thermal power stations in the Taupo area, where so many of our wonderful resources are already on the chopping block under this budget and future budgets of this government for them to help balance the books. And where as a result many of their reasonably well-off mates of the government will do well out of the sale of those, while good average everyday Kiwi families, good average everyday mums and dads in this country will simply lose their national right to those shares in those companies while they're privatised. Also, Mr Speaker, our veterans are left wanting, with only 10 out of 170 recommendations of a report from 2 years ago being enacted, and where at the same time the government is saying they're going to put money into education, but basically, Mr Speaker, the money that they take will be going into fixing leaky schools, leaky buildings, leaky government buildings, billions of dollars worth of, which again this national government back in the 90s was the cause of so many of our leaky problems around this country. Mr Speaker, This is a Fagan miserable budget. It's a budget that will always be looked back on by the people of New Zealand as being a no-growth budget with no vision, and basically, Mr Speaker, the people of New Zealand will be very disappointed in this.
I call the honourable member Barbara